Hey guys, I thought I'd bring you a different kind of video today. I did mention a little while ago that I'd do a video where I talk a bit about myself, who I am, my life journey, and sort of what's led me to this point. As many of you sort of just saw me arrive on the scene last year through the great reopening, which was an incredible part of my life, but my journey in itself goes back, at least in the awakening sort of side of things, for over 10 years. So I thought, I'm gonna go back into what I used to do. I used to do videos that are a bit longer and about all sorts of things, not just sort of activism and the latest news. And I'm sort of looking at it a little bit like sex. Sometimes you need that quick, fast, boom, boom, let's go. But if you've got a bit of time on your hands, why not take your time and build something up and have this nice, long experience? So this is what this video is going to be. And I'm just going to take it easy, sort of off the cuff mostly, although I do have a few things I definitely want to get across. And I thought I'd just come outside. It's the last bit of the daylight here, and I'm actually going to be moving location soon as well. So yeah, I thought I'd branch out into a few different ways of getting the information out there. So this video is going to be a little bit slower. You might need a bit of a longer attention span to make it through. And as you may have noticed, I've had a shave. So spring is coming, changes are happening in many different ways, collectively and for me personally as well. So why not try out a different method well, not a different method, but an older method. Because like I mentioned before, I have very few of you now who are watching these videos, who are watching my videos before I had started the Great Reopening this time last year, January 20th last year, and my entire life got flipped on its fucking head. I'm not kidding. It went from a pretty casual existence of doing my part, working on myself, doing some videos here and there, and just, enjoying myself really, but still almost carrying on the traveling lifestyle that I had before I came to the UK again, because before that I was actually traveling for 4 years. I had an incredible experience. But then I wanted to keep living outside of the system, so I had a pretty good life, and I still do. But it was pretty chill. And then the Great Reopening happened, and boom! I shit you not. It went from that to 14 to 16 hours a day, barely getting 4 to 5 hours sleep a night, as the whole thing just went fucking viral and took the entire UK activist movement by fucking storm. We absolutely just rocked the whole country, and it was incredible what was achieved and what people actually were able to do, and the amount of power and energy that was just thrown to this movement, and just to be at the very forefront of all of this, like, holy shit. Okay, looks like we're taking back the fucking country. Let's do it. Let's go. I feel like I just have to do this. I feel how powerful and important that is. So that was the Great Reopening, and since then I've been thrown into the forefront of activism, and I've met some incredible people along the way. I've had an incredible journey along the way. I never would have counted or guessed upon being a leader of the activist movement if you spoke to me a few years ago and what I was doing. But that was what was required of me. That's what reality, God, the plan that was there for me, and I stood up to the plate, and I'm very grateful for the experiences I had, and it's taught me so much. It's completely transformed me as a person. I am definitely a much stronger man who has had, well, being a leader is very, very challenging. And there was often, you don't see this behind the scenes of what was going on last year. These amazing protests that are happening, that there was literally hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million at the biggest, people all gathered together. That's a lot of energy and a lot of power coming together. But you don't see behind the scenes the incredible effort that went into organising these things, especially when there's dramas between leaders and they're fighting, no, let's do it this way, and there's suspicions over here, and some people think this, some people think that, and you've got to make decisions on who you're going to keep on board, and it was tough, but I think a lot has been achieved. I think right now England is, at least regarding COVID, is one of the freest Western nations in the entire world. Any country that was in pretty harsh lockdowns or COVID restrictions, we're now one of the freest. We've come out of it, and apart from a few minor things domestically here and there, I mean, I say minor, the fact that they're trying to roll out these experimental jabs for children is quite concerning, and there has been a huge lack of research and evidence on the fact that it may even be necessary. But there's something there that at least there is this choice. I mean, try telling people what to do with their children, right? And even if people are making decisions based from an unconscious fucking psychosis, there's mass formation psychosis, they're barely even choosing at an unconscious level what it is they actually are doing. They're still making the choice. They still have free will. So we can shout at them, we can tell them this is what we think is best, and it may well be, but they still do have the choice, which is very, very different when there's some entity by force is trying to clamp down and saying this is what everybody has to do, everyone has to get this jab, these are the mandates, and so on. So there's no lockdown mandates, there's no vaccine mandates. COVID passports have gone in England, and they're going, I think they're actually being dropped this week as well in Scotland. I'm sure Wales and Northern Ireland won't be too long to follow with that, and that's really, really inspiring. You think back to this time last year, it looked dark, man. It looked bleak, even though by this point the Great Reopening had had some success and was, at the forefront of raising the vibes in many ways. It still looked like lockdown for a very, very long time, and now it doesn't. Now that's gone. Now something else has popped up, the whole Ukraine-Russia situation. However, that in itself is almost certainly different to what the mainstream media is putting out there. And I'm hearing some really, really interesting theories that it's related to Russian forces taking out the American biolab facilities in Ukraine. I can't confirm if that's true or not, but Snopes fact-checked it super fast, one of the fastest fact checks I've ever seen, and all it was some guy on Twitter just posting it. His account actually got terminated, and there was like a map of these biolabs and the map of the military strikes, and you could say you could do that the same with anything, they're populist areas, whatever, so it's hard to say. But what's for sure is we're not getting the truth from the mainstream media. But I do actually think people are dying. I do think there is some sort of military conflict happening, so that's kind of serious. But then I was speaking to a Russian friend, and they're saying obviously, yeah, the Russian mainstream media is putting out that this is in the interest of Russia, it's protecting their borders, whilst obviously our mainstream media is putting it out there that the Russians are invading and the Russians are bad. But they've been saying that Russians have been bad for a very long time. It's kind of curious, because why would they do that? Why is it Russia, Russia, Russia? And there's even a funny little cartoon animation that takes a piss out of that literally blames everything on Russia in this really kind of funny way. So there's all of that happening, but then just when the COVID narrative was dropping, this has started to happen. Now it could be the whole thing is just another ruse just to keep people in fear. Can't actually have people starting to relax and start to high vibe, because maybe that has metaphysical impacts on what the bad guys can achieve, because they thrive in a more fear-based environment. They want the fear, they perhaps need the fear to survive. And then we get into potentially the upper workings of this matrix system, and I won't get into that just yet, but I had a really, really good interview with Tom Montauk where we talk a bit about this kind of material. Now I know a lot of you here who have been following this page, Open1, are into activism, and there might be parts of reality that just haven't quite come across into your reality. For example, from my own journey, I'm going to now go a little bit back into where I've come from, if you like. It has been a progression. Like, I started out 10 years ago when I first woke up. I had a pretty cushy matrix job, I'm not going to lie, as far as everything goes. I studied mechanical engineering for 2 years in college, and then from that I got a really good job in matrix terms. I was a CAD technician, and I had a beautiful career lined up for me in this company called Trinity House, actually, that looks after the lighthouses and the buoys all over the UK. It was something that I could have made a lot of money from, and I could have had it cushy in that kind of world. But I saw what people what had done to people who had been in that job that done it 20, 30 years, and it wasn't their passion, it wasn't what they lived to do. They didn't wake up and think, yes, this is what I'm doing. They're just doing it for the money, following the motions. This is what I should do, this is how I should make money. And a lot of people I saw were hollow shells in that environment, that office environment. And not everyone, to be honest. Some people maybe really fucking like looking at a computer screen and doing these little drawings and working with these lighthouses. I can see some people really passionate about that, and that's great, because we need engineers who can build and construct and be, have that logical mind to get stuff done in this environment. So that's great. So if that suits you, then perfect. But if it doesn't, it can be hell. And that's what it became for me. After about a year and a half, I quit. I did have something else that I thought would be a really good idea to try and do after quitting my job. I won't talk about it just yet. Maybe as I reveal more of this, who I am in these longer, slow videos, I could talk a bit about what I tried to do. It was a really stupid idea though, and perhaps I could have made better choices in that moment, but I didn't. I just wanted to break out of this system as quickly as possible, and yeah, it began a very, very dark and hard period of my life where so many things went terribly, terribly wrong. But it formed me to the man I am today. It built my character. I experienced what absolute lack of abundance can feel like, to be at the very base, to be the lowest you can go, pretty much, even to the point of considering suicide. It was just that hopeless. It was like there was nothing left in my life. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And it was tough, it was hard. But then I came out of that, and then I skipped forward a couple of years, and I actually went travelling. And I should mention, before I quit my job at Trinity House, I had my first successful social media page, because when I did wake up, when I was working at Trinity House, I actually remember the very fucking moment. I was reading an article, and I think it might have been on the BBC or something. I can't remember the exact article, but something in my mind was like, wait a minute, that ain't right. And I got this beautiful sensation come up my head, and was like, whoa, okay. And that was the very moment I wake up on my own terms. That's what happened. But it wasn't too long after that initial period of waking up. I'm just talking about everyone with my family, anyone I see, anyone in my reality, at parties, ended up having debates with people, and you get a crowd. I'm having this debate and on trains, literally anyone I could speak to in my reality got blasted with my perspective, and they call it the romantic rebellious phase, and I certainly went through that. But then I got in touch with some Facebook pages, and I started to get a lot of information through that. And I was very grateful that people took the time to create these pages and to share information with other people, because that was so instrumental in me waking up. And from that, I was so grateful for this. I felt almost like I had to do it, inclined. It was this responsibility that's been passed on to me to want to do it to other people, to help other people. So I started my own Facebook page, Learn How to Think. And I grew it through all this talking. The first 100 to 1,000 people was just me talking to everyone in my reality, like, hey, look, I have this page, check it out. And that's how it started. And then through its own, 2 feet, it just started to go kind of viral. It just exploded. And then I was in touch with other Facebook pages, and we'd do a share for a share, but by the end of the year, it got to 50,000 likes, and I was reaching like hundreds of thousands of people every week with my post. And I was just doing it casually. I wasn't even thinking about it. I wasn't planning like this is going to be a business idea, or I was just doing it, and it just came so naturally. And I probably appreciate the power I had, because I was quite young, and I didn't know what I could do with such a powerful piece of social media real estate, if you like. And but then also on the ground, I tried various different ways of being activist. I actually went to a couple of other protests, and then I did like a survey in my local town where I was just asking people, do you trust the government? I think I wanted to get like 100 people. I think I almost got there just randomly. Whenever I felt like it, I'd start walking around my town asking people. I put up I used the printers at my work, Trinity House. Sorry, thanks for that. Sorry, guys. I used it a lot and printed loads and loads of flyers, and just one day I just sort of threw them everywhere. Another day I'd post them up, and I remember once I threw loads all over the floor in one of my hometown streets, and then like a week or so later, I'm walking down there with a few of my friends, and one of them sort of grabs me and is like, "Yo, Trav, look!" And it was one of my posters. I'm going to put it up in their window. And it says something like, people's worst assumption or biggest assumption is that our government would never do this to us. And it was so inspiring to see that, in someone's window. But by far the greatest impact I had was with social media, putting the word out there online, and it was quite the experience. So, but then I was doing that, I was doing what I could, and then but that wasn't what I was going to transition into after I quit Trinity House. It was something else. And unfortunately, during my really dark period of life, like the darkest period of life, I've had other challenges and dark periods since then, that was definitely the hardest so far, and let's hope it's the fucking hardest ever. I mean, there'll be other challenges in other ways for sure, because that's what this reality is about, but I almost had to stop it, and it was kind of a shame really, because maybe if I'd have been a bit more wiser, I could have kept that going, and it could have been something to be a powerful tool for years and years. But anyway, I didn't. But so then 2016 I went travelling, and I got a kind of a pretty shit part-time job, but it was something to keep me going, save a bit of money, and a little bit of help from my dad. He's not a wealthy man by any means, but he did help me out getting a plane ticket to Australia. And the plan was, okay, hasn't worked for me here in England right now in this way, let's try somewhere else. And I just initially planned for 1 year in Australia. We'll see how it goes, and then I'll come back. And little did I know that I'd be away for 3 years, and I'd have the most incredible time of my life. Throughout Australia, I managed to beat all of my addictions. Now, I should probably mention I was heavily addicted to multiple substances: tobacco, weed, caffeine, alcohol, ecstasy. I guess you could probably throw sugar in there as well. Haven't quite beaten the sugar yet. I love a bit of chocolate here and there, but even that's pretty damn toned down to what it used to be. So I had these addictions. I mean, sex probably on there as well. And then in Australia, I had such an incredible time, and I could maybe talk about the psychedelic experiences I experienced as well that may have helped in that regard. But in general, that was an incredible experience. That as well, what helped as well was meditation and things like Qigong. I should mention as well, when I did wake up, it wasn't too long after that initial waking up that I discovered things like meditation and personal development. So that's also been part of my journey, even though I took a detour after I quit my job, definitely. But so for 10 years I've been practicing meditation, and then 2 years after discovering meditation, I discovered Qigong, which was something really quite amazing as well, and that's a whole thing in itself. And I was practicing that extensively, and through my darkest part of my life, I discovered Qigong, and it was like this ray of sunshine when everything else was falling apart, and really did help me. But I didn't have such a consistent practice. I was doing it maybe just once or twice a week. But then when I went to Australia, coupled with the incredible experiences I was having in the outside world, just like so blown away by how alive and vibrant it is, I was also developing myself spiritually even more, and meditation became a part of my life, and even more so. And one by one, I was beating my addictions. I'm glad I sort of did it one by one. It wasn't just all boom at the same time. I imagine that would be quite difficult. But yeah, by the time I'd left Australia, I had an incredible experience, incredible time. I met all these amazing people. I'd seen all this amazing scenery and wildlife, and I did a lot of what's called HelpX, which is a volunteer exchange program where you live with people and you work for your food and accommodation. So I spent a huge amount of time living in different kinds of communities and living with people for extended periods, not just whistle stop tour, bam bam bam, you know, you're in one place for a week, one place for a week, one place for a week, one place. I did a little bit of that here and there, but for the most part I was traveling quite slowly, and I'd get to know people on a deep level before I'd move on to somewhere else. And so much time was spent just sitting around campfires discussing philosophy and spirituality and how does this reality work. And I think there's so much that can be gained from that. I'm quite grateful. I spoke with people all over the world, because all the people from all over the world were attracted to Australia, and you'd sit there and you'd chew the fat, and you'd be able to just hammer out and consider what is this reality all about, try and figure it out. So that's partly how I think I developed part of my skill for life coaching, is just casually sort of building up this life experience throughout my life. And also once I became knowledgeable on certain things, and then I'd talk to someone else about like spirituality, I was able to disseminate my knowledge, especially when I started to talk about how I beat my addictions, and if that's something that people are having trouble with, I think I can be very, very helpful in anyone who's suffering from addictions, from having gone through it myself and what worked for me. And for example, though, it took me 5 attempts actually to finally quit tobacco, and it was hard each time. You sort of, when you come back to it, you sort of hate yourself a little bit, but you gotta love yourself still. That's a big part of it, I'd say, loving yourself. So by the time I'd actually left Australia, I then didn't want to go home. I wasn't ready to come back to England yet. Needed a bit more sunshine and life experience before I returned home. And so then I decided to go to New Zealand, and it was incredible. It was amazing. I preferred New Zealand to Australia. I spent 2 years in New Zealand, and even the first place I went to was this naturopath who had a lot of information about nutrition. I think she took it a little bit too seriously, but it was great. And then I did probably one of the first notable experiences I had in New Zealand was doing a Vipassana course, which is a meditation course where for 10 days all you do is meditate, and there's no talking, there's no reading, there's no writing, there's no music, there's none of this, no phones. All you do is meditate. All your food is cooked for you. At 4 o'clock in the morning is a fucking gong that goes bang, wakes you up. By 4:30 you're expected to be meditating. And it's grueling, man. It's tough, but the technique itself is really, really, really good. And it was like perfect for me to already have been sober, because now I could just pick up this technique, and straight away, I mean, after the 100-hour course, which was so tough, and after like the first 3 days, the physical pain isn't the main thing, which is really a lot, by the way. The pain of sitting there on your ass and for hours and hours on end is intense, but that's part of the technique, supposedly, is to just keep focusing whilst you're in pain and ignore the pain. And then you get onto the emotional side of it, and that's a whole thing in itself, and it's up and down, and 1 minute you're like achieving this grand level of bliss and you're in absolute harmony, the next minute you're like, holy shit, get me out of here, I just want to run through the fucking door and never come back. And it's kind of like being in a bit of a mental asylum, I have to admit, when you just see all these people walking around and nobody's saying anything, and you're not supposed to talk to them. It's kind of strange, but hell of an experience, and the technique itself is really, really good. I do think the discourses at the end of the day kind of ruined it for me, and that's why I don't actually recommend people go do the course, because for me, I already got the technique out of it, and I can pass this on to anybody who wants to learn it. I even have a video somewhere of me teaching it. The discourses at the end really ruined it for me, and I was concerned about how in this environment, the only voice you hear is this S.O. Goenka speaking through these big loud speakers, and there's these loud bright lights, and after a while you start to lose sleep, and they try and sort of convert you to Buddhism. I mean, the course is initially free, and donations are kind of expected, but it is free. But I do think that part of the price is to have to try not to be converted to Buddhism along the way, because they do sort of, and there's a bit of shaming around sex and around meat, and I didn't really appreciate that, and about any other kind of religious belief or spiritual belief. So I don't actually recommend the course, but the technique is brilliant. Vipassana technique, focusing on the body, is brilliant. And so from there, I did the meditation every day for nearly a year, and then I consistently kept doing it, just not maybe every day. And then over the years, I've built up my own practice. And then in 2017, maybe my second year of New Zealand, I started to do the social media stuff again, and I created a website and had all these articles, and I got back into helping people in that kind of way. And that was 2017, and I started doing videos just talking about kind of like this, about anything that was on my mind, although I didn't actually have the camera on me. It was just a picture, and I was sort of just getting into being confident enough to talk at great lengths about all of the different stuff that I've experienced, what my beliefs are, what I think this reality is all about. And again, I had some incredible psychedelic experiences in New Zealand that were absolutely phenomenal, that really changed my life in many ways. And then I also discovered that, partly through the help of one psychedelic called the Amanita muscaria, that I could do rap music. So that's something else that I started getting into, and an album all sort of based around helping people through music. Then, as well as that, I started writing my first book, and that took me a while to complete that, but that was started in New Zealand. So a lot of things for me started in New Zealand, and it was a great time of my life. So then that, I think I was being trained and groomed in preparation for where I'm at now, but like I say, I kept doing that for a couple of years, and then I came back to, is there anything noteworthy about New Zealand that I'd like to mention to you guys though before I jump away from it? No, I think I covered the main things that really were quite life-changing there, and how my journey progressed, and I was sober the whole time, which really was quite something for me to say when I look back at how much I used to abuse certain substances. Like, I was smoking weed every day, I was drinking nearly every day, I was taking ecstasy nearly every weekend, if not more frequent, which was kind of crazy to think about. I really hammered my body. But then in New Zealand, I was completely sober for 2 years. It was incredible. Then I come back and come back for my sister's wedding actually. Then I went traveling around Europe, and I kept building on these platforms that I have, and experiencing and learning, and developing myself, getting into spirituality, these practices, and meeting people, building up this perspective on the world. At some point in 2016 is when I started getting into the alien subject as well, and my whole reality flipped on its head again, with the hyperdimensional side of reality and the occult side of what's going on here, and the higher spiritual war and all that kind of stuff. But then when I come back, then I went to Europe, and then I come back again. Funnily enough, I was like, okay, yeah, I think I'm just going to stay in England for a bit, see what happens. I've explored plenty of the world. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm going to come back. And then boom, fucking COVID happened. And I was like, okay, here, the lockdowns are here. I'm going to keep doing the HelpX, which is what I've done extensively throughout the past 3 years, 4, 5, 6 years. When did I first start? 2016. But then, in Australia, New Zealand, that's what I was doing. And then a lot of... and then again, not a little bit around Europe, and then when I come back, lockdown happened, and I was doing a HelpX, and then it wasn't too long after that I started picking up potentially some of the first ever real following that I ever had since learning how to think. And some of you watching this may be from there, maybe from the first videos that I did talking about the mask mandates, and that was what really activated me, and that's when I got back into activism in the sort of summer of 2020. And I remember the very first day the mask mandates came out for supermarkets, I was in there doing my no mask video, and it was quite something. And I could talk a bit about what I did with the reality creation side of that, and how me and many others fought back against that, and how maybe that was how exemptions became a thing. Because I've never worn a mask, I've never had a test, and I'm never going to take the vaccine. So that's quite something to say, and achievable in England, I think, is partly because of the huge amounts of non-compliance that's happened here. So big ups to everyone in the UK activist movement. And I started to build up a little bit of a following. I never forget the first time I ever got called controlled opposition. It was so exciting. I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow. I mean, I'm barely getting a few hundred views here on my videos, but someone thinks that I'm controlled opposition. I must be making waves somewhere. And it was such an honour, a badge of honour. I was really, really happy about that. And then you skip forward to 2021. January the 20th, 2021, the Great Reopening happened. Quite a few of you know what happened with that movement, and I briefly covered what happened after that. And then it was protests, and it was fighting back in many different ways, and just being an activist. That was literally my entire life, became being an activist. It was how I even was keeping myself alive, and a really amazing experience. And now where I'm at now, activism will always be a part of my life. I can see that, and the rest of the world still needs a lot of help, and there's still things here in England that needs to be sorted out. We haven't won yet for sure, but I think it's going to take a slight backseat into fact, I would like to get more into personal development, spirituality, and life coaching, and helping people in other ways, because activism is only a part of it. And I do think ultimately what humanity needs is to evolve and grow and develop, and spirituality is, for me, the most powerful way we can do that. And that can involve a huge variety of things. It can involve just knowing about metaphysics and applying this knowledge and experimenting with what actually works, things like reality creation, as well as like psychic abilities and stuff like that. These higher parts of being a human. I think that's where a lot of our power lies, a lot of our potential lies, and our enemies know this, and they're desperately terrified of it, and that's why they're trying to roll out things like fluoride, because they know how that would affect us spiritually. So that's where I think a huge part of our greatest power lies, and that's where I want to transition into in the future. But also keeping the spotlight on what's actually going on, keep current events, the truth, or an alternative perspective to the mainstream media, because sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what's going on, like this Ukraine situation, but an alternative perspective can sometimes be very enlightening, and that's what I'm going to keep doing. And it's going international now. I have admins all over the world that have stepped up to the plate to help their country. Unfortunately, a lot of it is based on Instagram at the moment. I would like to get it as much as possible onto maybe Telegram or other platforms that are censorship free, because there's always this overhanging worry of shadow banning, and then of maybe God bless the Instagram accounts, because so far mine's been doing okay, that it hasn't got banned completely. It's just been shadow banned, unfortunately. But maybe with something like Truth Social coming, that could fill that void. Unfortunately, it's not available anywhere apart from the United States right now. But other social media platforms that get enough of people on it to make an impact will be very useful, because the main ones, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, they're just so heavily censored, and it's kind of boring, and it feels like an unfair playing field. So to build a media empire, which is kind of what I'm doing, to get the truth of what's going on in each country out to the other country, and to sort of work together internationally, it'd be nice if we weren't fucking shadow banned every time, and sort of were allowed to just be free, independent press, if you like. And that's going to be a part of it. That's part of the future of Open1. And I actually have really, really grand visions for what I would like to achieve in this lifetime. And little did I know when I started Open1 that it's actually going to be such a huge part of it. But in the future, I have big plans. I'm not going to say too much about what they are exactly, but it does involve bringing truth to the community internationally, and having sort of like these media channels, and then how that can grow and develop and evolve over time could be an instrumental part in my greater plan. So if you've stuck around this far, if you're actually somebody who has since last year or before still followed what I do, and you're interested in what I say, and you've gotten all the way to the end of this video, because this is a long one, right? This is a long video, especially in the world of 1 minute Instagram videos and 15-second story videos, and boom, 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 quick. Then you must really, really appreciate what I have to say. So I appreciate you. I'm really happy you made it to the end of this video, and this is a little snippet of what my life has been about. And I will definitely be doing more videos like this, and I'll talk specifically about certain parts. I could probably do a whole half an hour on just what I experienced in Australia, for example, and New Zealand, and the dark part of my life, and talking about my experiences with meditation as well. I did sort of cover it quite quickly, but I thought I'd just give a general overview. And this is why I do think I am sort of qualified in many ways to talk about life coaching, to say to people, hey, look, I've experienced life, I've gone through hard things, good things, bad things, I know what works in some ways, I know what doesn't, spirituality, activism, metaphysics, addictions, confidence, people skills, finding your passion, all these things, relationships, sexuality. I feel like I can help people in all of these fields. So if any of you would like to receive some life coaching with me, just get in touch. I really enjoy doing it. It's so inspiring and inspirational to work with people in this kind of way. I think I've pretty much said everything that I want to say in this video right now. So I love you guys. I appreciate you, especially if you've made it through 34 minutes of me talking. And I'll see you in the next one.